It's finally time to talk about the three rooms method, why I like it so much, why it works, and of course, I'm going to show you two games at the same time where you can learn what this method is about. You can see it in practice in one of my games, in one of my students' games. That way you can see how it works at any level. And of course, we're also going to talk about this IQ meme that one of my students sent me regarding the three rooms method. Now, let's get it out of the way. The three rooms method, it's basically my own version, my little changes that I have made to the old concept of the phases of a chess game: opening, middle game, and end game. I just want you to imagine you are in a house with three different rooms, because in addition to a few different things that I've changed, I feel like the main problem a lot of my private students have is that they don't really realize when they left a room and entered another room. Now, you could think of it as rooms, you could think of it as three different games, like if you're playing chess, checkers, and dominoes. Once you're done with room number one, once you do develop your pieces, your minor pieces, once you control the center, once you castle, whoever does that first is ready to play the second game, right? So I want you to stand up. If I could, I would have you physically stand up, go to another room, and play another game with a different set of rules. Now, once you get an advantage, once you get an edge in the second room, you're ready to hurry up and try to transition into the end game. And of course, if we do this right, if we get the hang of it, you're always going to be in your game any given moment. You're going to know what to ask, what questions to ask, so that you find the right answer and you know what to play next. So with that said, let's go straight to it. We're gonna talk about the IQ meme later, but I'm gonna start with room number one. I'm controlling the center from the beginning. My student, Adam, his first move is also pawn to d4, right? Now, as you can see in my game, my opponent right away creates complications. So he's already challenging my pawn. In Adam's game, d6 is played, so he has it a little bit easier. No one is challenging his development. Now, for me, I don't care what happened with my opponent. All I know is I want to develop my pieces, castle, as quickly as possible. That way I can move on to the second room, where I'm going to be focusing on improving my minor pieces even more, putting them in my opponent's territory, activating my major pieces, capturing, attacking the enemy king. And we're gonna talk about no bystanders in a moment. But anyways, here, without knowing theory, I'm just gonna take the pawn. If I know that if I don't take that pawn could take me, could become problems, I'm just going to take. If you know about theory, if you care about theory, then you probably know that d5 is the recommended move. For me, I don't really mind it, right? So I took, then my opponent plays e6, and I'm going to play e4, controlling the center, opening up the bishop. That's all I care about. I don't need to calculate. I don't need to ask questions. That's it. They took. I'm going to develop my knights. Then I'm going to develop my bishop. And just like that, I'm ready to castle my king. Now, my opponent plays pawn to d5. Again, I don't know what the theory is. I don't know. I'm not calculating. I just know that pawn is being aggressive. And if I don't take it, it is going to take me. So no questions to ask here. So I go ahead, take the pawn before it becomes a problem. There's one of my students, she's probably watching this, who actually, she at the beginning, she didn't like these confrontations and she would rarely take. But then after some time me driving her crazy, she started to actually take and be more aggressive. Now I call her Aggressive Mary Lee, and her games are going way, way, way better, right? So they take. Now the e-file opened up, so another reason to put the king in safety. Notice how I put secure your king. I didn't put castle, because sometimes castling is not the safest way, right? But right here, I'm just gonna castle, my opponent castles, and then finally, I get to develop my last minor piece. From this moment on, when my opponent does the same thing, it has to click for me. Many people just continue playing their game. I am very aware that I finished with the opening. Now, if I could, I would make you stand up, go to another room, and play another game called the middle game. Now, the rules, again, it's not about developing, it's not about castling, it's about trying to get the lead when it comes to putting pressure? Can I get my pieces to their territory? Can I improve my queen so that my queen helps out and the rooks? Can I capture pieces? Can I attack their king? That's all I'm looking for. Now, I said that later we were going to talk about no bystanders. I put that there because, well, you see it later in this game, but basically it has to do with not leaving your opponent's pieces in your territory for too long. For example, this bishop that I have in black's territory is pinning the knight. Right now it's just a bishop, but then next thing you know, you got the bishop and the knight, then bishop, knight, and queen. So all I'm saying is, if I'm black, I would be trying to get rid of that bishop right away. Kick them out. Don't let them create anything in your territory. But anyways, after bishop e6, my opening is complete, and then we're going to talk about how I continue from here. Now, sorry for the back and forth. I hope it's not really confusing. Let's take a look now on this side to Adam, how he got through his first room, right? So his opponent is not really challenging anything. He didn't have to make tough decisions of taking or anything like that. And he's just developing his pieces, castling, and then after knight b to d2, he basically decided, I'm not gonna get the bishop out. I'm okay with leaving it behind for now. With these pieces that I have and my king safe, I'm ready to start attacking. So his opponent goes knight to f6, and then because he's so ahead in development, he goes ahead and plays pawn to e4. Now, I cannot tell you if he realized this is hanging, but the truth is the computer loves this move because taking it by black would only allow white to open up lines to attack the king. He's already done with room number one, and that's why he was careless, but that's why he's trying to start room number two, which is about putting pressure, making contact, especially here because this king is in the center, right? So now we both are done with room number one. We're ready to go to room number two. If I get any small advantage here, if I win a pawn, a piece, if I create weaknesses in my opponent's territory, I'm going to be rushing to transition into room number three. Now, back to my game here. So in this game, I know I'm done with the opening, but then what do? This is the early middle game where a lot of people get confused. Well, I go to my list. Can I improve any of my minor pieces that I already developed? Not really. Capturing, I can only capture this knight, but I really like the idea of keeping it pinned. It cannot go anywhere. And then I'm only thinking of improving my queen and my rooks. That's it. And improving means getting them out there, getting them off their home squares, right? So next move here is queen up, very simple. Then we got pawn to a6. Of course, I'm looking at that move. My attention goes there. Is that move aggressive? Is it attacking anything? Can I eat it? The answer is no, so I continue with my plan. Now, my rooks belong on these files. These are the open and semi-open files. There are no pawns in front of them. My own pawns are not going to be in front of them, so that's where I want them. So this rook goes from being behind the pawn, so no scope, to being right here. Yes, we have a queen and a bishop in the way, but those are easy to remove. Way easier than getting a pawn out the way. Now, after rook d1, we got pawn to b5. Again, every time my opponent moves, I pay attention. I realize this could be a little bit annoying, so I'm going to take a move to just put a stop to it. Then we got rook to a7. I look at the rook, I cannot take it. It's not attacking me. So I continue with my game. Again, I don't really know what to do here. So I ask myself, which of my pieces can I improve? If you thought of the rook, it makes sense. But I took a moment to improve my queen. Now, I looked around. You don't know how many times I have lost my queen because I play quickly and they capture it. So I looked around. It is active. No one can take me. And as you should know if you have been following this course, when there is a pin piece, we are supposed to add more pressure to it. So queen f4, my opponent plays bishop e7. Very satisfying when we are improving our pieces and our opponent is getting passive, going backward. Now, after bishop e7, same question, what can I do next? Does it make sense to trade? Not a big deal if we take, but no one is asking me to do it. I don't want them to improve their bishop. And honestly, I like the idea of keeping this pressure right here. So which of my pieces can I improve? the rook could also come to e1. This bishop could get into enemy territory. So I already have the bishop. They are not taking care of the bystanders in their territory. My queen is pretty active. If I could bring the bishop as well, I actually like it. Now, is this the best move? I don't know, and I don't care. I'm improving my position. Now, one thing that I haven't mentioned, but I hope if you went over lesson, I want to say 101, you know about the isolated queen's pawn. It's a weak pawn. It cannot be defended by friendly pawns because the c pawn is gone, the e pawn is gone. So not only am I putting pressure, but if this bishop ever leaves, that pawn is going to have one less defender. So bishop f5, my opponent goes rook to d7. So notice how this was a very sophisticated plan by my opponent, very strong national master. He went rook a7, rook d7 to defend the weak pawn. Now, I don't know what to do again. I could take if I wanted to, but I decided to keep the pressure and improve my rook. You see, I don't know what to do. Which of my pieces can I improve? Well, the rook. Now, I'm attacking this bishop twice, and for that reason, my opponent finally took. I took back, and after pawn to d4, now I'm being attacked. Now I have to make a decision. Very simple. Your first response should be, or your first instinct should be, can I capture that pawn? Well, it's very well defended. So of course we cannot take it. Time to move the knight. And if I could, I'm going to bring it to an active square. So knight goes to e4. I know everything is defended. I'm very happy to simplify the game. Number one, because they have an isolated pawn, the less pieces on the board, the more difficult it is for them to defend that pawn. But in general, it's okay to simplify the game, even if it's a fair trade. The less pieces on the board, the less things to keep track of, the less chances of blundering. Nothing wrong with that. Now, after knight e4, after taking on e4, I could take with the rook, nothing wrong with it. I could take with the queen attacking this knight, or you could do what I did, which was, you know what? I want to simplify as much as possible, so I'm going to do an in-between move here, hitting the queen. And then whatever they take with is going to take one defender away from this pawn. He has to take with rook, queen, or knight. So they decided to go with the rook. Now, rook takes e4. I'm very happy if we keep trading. If you play well and the game ends up in a draw, nothing I can do. It is what it is. Now, instead they play rook e8. I'm not calculating. I don't care about anything. Trade, 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 trade. Now, rook to e7. At this point, I don't know about you, but I have so many times fallen for the backhand checkmate, right? So this pattern, I'm very familiar with it. So I played a prophylactic move, being proactive, pawn to h3, just in case I get excited, collect the pawn, and then they checkmate me. So my opponent did the same thing. They did it with a tempo on my queen. And of course, now that he's forcing me to move, I'm looking around. Where can I go with the queen so that I attack something? And I hope that you already saw it. If you didn't find a good move on your own, pause the video, think of what you would play. Well, I went queen to c5, attacking the hanging knight, no one is defending it, and putting more pressure on this pawn. So one of the two is going to fall. We got queen to d7, easy, free pawn, and from the moment I take this knight, all I'm thinking about is I want to go to an endgame. The moment I get a little pawn, I'm ready to go to another room and play a completely different game. Right now, it's about attacking, putting pressure, capturing. Now when I get to the endgame, all I'm thinking about is, because I'm going to have an extra pawn, I'm going to have 3 versus 2. I'm going to be able to trade these two for these two, and then my extra pawn is going to be a passed pawn. My opponent indeed goes ahead and captures. My first reaction is, oof, I'm going to take with the queen because then I get to remove the queens. That queen is the one that could get me in trouble. Now, if we did this, there's a simple tactic where they put us in check. If we take, we simply lose the queen. If instead we move the king over, well, we lose the rook, right? And that's not what we want. So just because of that little detail, I took with the rook, I'm hitting the queen, check, I move over, and then my opponent takes a moment to connect the pieces. Fine. Now, queen to c7 is the next move. I'm taking care of any checks through this diagonal, but I'm also ready to pin their queen. Because of that, my opponent goes ahead and trades the queens with check. I'm so happy to see this because officially, the moment we trade queens, I am on room number 3, the end game. And then it's a completely different game. So it's important that we really stand up, go to that room and become very aware of it. Don't continue in autopilot. A moment ago, if I wanted to get my king out, that would be a disaster because this powerful queen could put me in check, and then the pawns, the rooks, I could get checkmated in the middle of the board. But now, after the queens are gone, my king is so happy to come out and help. So if we go to room number 3, what we're supposed to do, we're supposed, number 1, you hear endgame, you gotta think, activate the king. Even if you had 5,700 pawns, you activate the king. You're supposed to create and push your passed pawns. Again, you're gonna see in a moment, but because I have 3 versus 2, once these 2 are traded for these 2, I'm going to have my passed pawn, right? And then restrict the enemy king. You're gonna see it in this game as well. And finally, simplify. If I get rid of the rooks, that's it. That's it. Now, in the game, I wanted to activate the king, but I have messed it up so many times that I remember this time to not allow them to capture my pawn. So I took a moment to ask myself, how can I mess this up? Well, if I let the enemy rook collect my pawn. So prophylactic move again, and then my king comes over to the side where I have the advantage. So a5, c3, b4, and now you can see how this 3 versus 2 turns into a 2 versus 1, and then finally he's gonna get the pawn back, but I go from having 2 versus 1 to having 1 passed pawn. That's it. Now, if I could, again, I'll remove the rooks, and that would be a very easy endgame. Now, let me show you for a moment here. Imagine the rooks are gone, the game would be very easy. I have a pawn here that I could push with the intention of promoting, or I could use it as a way to distract the enemy king, right? I don't have to do it like that, but you see, the moment, by the time they go after my pawn and they actually capture it, my king is just way closer to the remaining of the pawns. So I'm gonna get them all, and I got myself a brand new set of passed pawns. So that's why from the moment I saw that I got an extra pawn, I'm thinking, oof, there's an imbalance, there's a pawn majority. I already know what I want to do in the final room in the end game. Back in here, we have the rooks, but the plan is the same, right? So I'm going to focus on the side where I have the advantage. My king is here to help. And notice how the moment I moved my king over, my rook is doing one of the items on room number 3, which is restricting the enemy king whenever possible. So when I do this, I'm ready to help the pawn promote, and the enemy king is there unable to do anything. So very simple from now on. Push the pawn, bring the king to help. At this point, you could go around it if you wanted to. I decided to be energetic, get into their territory. Then king to a5. I don't want to go to a6 because then I lose the pawn, right? So king a5, then little zigzag here to attack the rook, and I keep pushing the pawn. Very important. You don't know how many of my students, they make the mistake of, actually Adam was one of them, that he wasn't at this stage, that he'll get to this endgame, very easy to win, as you can see, but then he'll be still trying to checkmate the king. So he'll be like check, 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 and then the king will move around, collect his pawns, and then he'll lose in the end, right? In the end game, room number 3, the rules are different. Just focus on getting your passed pawn to the end. That's it. So finally, my king gets to b7, and now I just need to push the pawn to the end. They will have to give me the rook for my passed pawn when I promote. My king will take it, and then my rook should win the game. Now, at this point, my opponent, either he got confused or he was setting up a trap in case I play fast and he gets the rook, but this was the end of the game. And we finished it on room number 3 without checkmating their king, just focusing on getting a passed pawn to the end. Now, let's move over to Adam's game, right? So we left it here in room number 1. True that he hasn't developed this bishop, but he's okay with it. He feels like he's ready to attack with what he has out, especially since his opponent has not castled and he hasn't fully developed, right? Black pieces are not following our three rooms method, at least not the way that we like it, right? So after e4, we got bishop g7, rook goes to e1, ready to help the pawn push and get to the king, and now pawn to e5, right? So this was a silly mistake. D takes e5 is all it takes to collect a free pawn. After he got that pawn, he sapped a pawn. It seems tiny, but that's all it took for him to start simplifying the game to get into room number 3. Now, when I'm reviewing this game, I'm thinking, hey, knight to d3 makes a lot of sense, even knight to f3, but he went knight to g4, and he did it on purpose just to simplify the game. So knight takes, queen takes. Knight to d7, pawn to c3. Now, pawn to c3 is a very interesting move because this bishop is very powerful. Now we're restricting those bishops. It's not going to bother us anymore. Knight to e5, attacking the queen. Not a big deal. We go back to safety. And from here, that queen is actually attacking a pawn. Now, castle queenside, he gets another pawn. Now he's not up only one pawn, but two. And that means if we remove everything, all the queens, the knights, the rooks, the bishops, then this is going to be a very easy endgame. Actually, let me go back here and imagine for a moment all of the pieces gone except for kings and pawns. Notice how we're going to have the same thing. 4 pawns versus 3 on the king side, pawn majority. So if we trade this pawn for this pawn, this pawn for this pawn, this pawn for this pawn, we're going to have our passed pawn. Of course, you cannot do it right now or you will get checkmated, but when all of the pieces are gone, your king is happy to come out. That's room number 3. And then you do that. Actually, if you allow me, you can see here what it'll look like, right? Just centralize the king. If you remember on room number 3, that's what we want to do. Then create and push your passed pawn. Once you have the passed pawn on the king side, let's say these 3 are gone and these 3 are gone, they will have to come for this one, and then your king is going to be in the meantime collecting the rest of their pawns. And this is what we talk so much about in chess, playing chess backwards. You know what you want in the end game, so you play your room number 1 and room number 2, and you make decisions based on that end game that you want in the in room number 3, right? Back in here, we know he got another pawn. As you can see, there are silly mistakes like dropping pawns and things like that. That's very normal in the lower level. So if you're there or you've been there like myself, you know what it is like. But regardless, there's something very interesting, which is after knight to d3, of course the rook moves, knight takes on c1, horrible move because this bishop has not even developed, and they invested so much time and energy on their knight only to trade it for a very bad bishop, right? But again, this happens at this level. Eventually we understand these concepts and we make better decisions. Now, after queen e5, again, black has no idea of what the plan is here. If you're down material, if you're down, you should try to keep the pieces, especially the queen, and avoid walking into the third room where your opponent will simplify and win the end game, right? So Adam here, any other moment, he'll be trying to keep the queens, trying to checkmate the king, but finally he was like, nope, easy, trade. The moment the queens are gone, we're walking from room number 2, we're standing up, and we're going into room number 3. There we go, they take, knight to c4, improving the knight, trade, happy to see that, and then we get another pawn. That's it. We can see this passed pawn being a huge asset for white. Rook d8, another mistake, and then knight to b7. Now, I'll leave the game here, but something very interesting happened. After, you see here, he understood this concept. It's taken us some work for him to get here automatically, so naturally, but he's there, a4, pushing the pawn. He forgot something very important. I mentioned that before. Even if you have 5,700 pawns, passed pawns, it doesn't hurt to activate the king. So he started to push in the pawn. His opponent is the one activating the king. And you'll see how that black king, of course, he had a fork, he didn't see it, okay. Now, he's tangling himself by just pushing, using the pawn and the knights. It's the end game, it's room number 3, activate the king. But anyways, he's pushing pawns. You see how there are some mistakes, and then you can see how that pawn I mean, that king is just taking care of everything. In the meantime, the white king is doing nothing. And you don't know how many games I've lost because of that. Rule number 3, activate your king. Activate your king. Now, another topic, another thing that I wanted to share with you is that in here, Adam plays knight to c3. Very fancy move. He's thinking, hey, if you take me, I'm gone. Now, this is something that I've told him many times. He's at a stage where he's getting really good at tactics, but I told him you gotta go through a stage where you do those fancy tactics in a clumsy way. You find the pattern, but then you don't pay attention to a little detail and so on until you get better, you polish it, and then you get the hang of it. Like here, his opponent didn't fall for it. No, finally he's activating the king, and then he didn't realize that with the pawn gone, this is just a hanging knight. So he loses the knight, he's getting in trouble, but then this forced him to do the right thing, which is activating the king. Notice how before the black king was the one active and he was dominating even though he was down material. Now the white king is the one active, and that changes the whole dynamic. F4, activate the king. Pay attention to this king compared to this king. Activate the king. You see, he just went from white's territory into black's territory. E5, and then one of my favorite moves in this endgame is G4. He realized he has the 4 versus 3 and he needs to put it in motion to create the pass pawn. Took. Now we went from 4 versus 3 to having 3 versus 2, and more specifically, we got 2 versus 1 right here to create a passed pawn and push it to the end. There we go, passed pawn. Then bishop f1, defending this pawn. King is coming over. Maybe this was faster. None of this matters if you know what you're looking for. If you look again, one of the items on room number 3 is creating and pushing pawns. He created it. He knows he needs to push it. Now, maybe this was faster, but he's going for it. There we go. And then you push. There we go. And then you're not going to promote, but you get their bishop. That's it. There we go. There we go. Now this passed pawn is going to be captured by the bishop. And after we get the queen, I hope you know how to finish this. Basic queen and king checkmate, and that was the end of it. Again, 2 different levels. I'm playing at the 24-2500. Adam is playing at the 1400-1500, and we both follow this principle. Simplify when you're ahead, and it's gonna make your life much easier. Do you have to train your tactics? Because that's important, of course, and there's so much to learn, but at least you have a plan, you have some guidance. Now, about the meme, that meme that I showed you about the IQ, my other student, Nee, he sent it to me. He said, I have to show you something because something finally clicked for me. Basically, the meme is, if you're not familiar with it, it's very popular, I think. It's just about how someone with low IQ and someone with really high IQ came to the same conclusion. Very simple. You want to take notes, use this app, and you're going to be fine. And then a lot of smart people in between, in the middle, are overcomplicating things. Use 25 different apps to just take notes, right? Well, he was telling me, not with IQ, but with experience. He was saying, finally, I got to the point that I'm not in the middle, over calculating everything and complicating my life when I get to the middle game. Now I am, just like you, keeping it simple. Doing what I have to do in the opening without memorizing too much theory. In the middle game, develop my pieces, castle, and then start putting pressure. If I could attack the king and checkmate it, I do it. If not, I try to weaken their pawns or capture a free pawn or a piece, and then quickly I simplify the game and I walk into room number 3 where I try to create and push a passed pawn with the help of the king and other pieces, and that makes my life easier. Many of his games are taking longer, but he knows where he's going every step of the way. So there you have it. I hope this helps. Now, from this moment on, we're going to be bringing these 3 rooms up every single time. Whatever we do, live streams, they're going to be there. We review master games. We're going to see how masters, elite players, world champions follow these. And I hope that it becomes second nature to you. Like I always tell you, I don't know much more than this. So at least to natural master you're gonna get if you use this. So with that said, let me know in the comments if you think I'm just trying to reinvent the wheel, or if you really think this could be, you could be more aware of this in your games. With that said, see you in the comments, and until next time.